What's going on, everybody? Hopefully, y'all can hear me. I know I am late, right? Um, Excuse me for the absence for the past few days. I've been dealing with the remnants of this cold, right? And let me see. Let me turn this on real quick. Okay, that didn't work. Okay, yeah. Alrighty then. All right, let's do our intros. Y'all like, share, subscribe, hit the super chat, right? Um, and I am stuck right now behind a bunch of non-moving cars that don't really care. Okay. Yeah. So, Trell Bentley was going on. Trell said, "I'm too old for this. I'm too old for this ish." What do you say? When I hear people introduce themselves via pronouns and sexuality, then my eyes roll back. Bro, I know. So let's get into it. So we will be reviewing Kim from Fort Harriet, Kim Foster's video about struggle love, and I actually enjoyed this conversation. That doesn't mean I agreed with everything. I actually, wow. Okay. Let's address some of the elephant in the room. You know, I, excuse me. I would argue most people don't have the intellectual heft, the emotional heft to actually engage with this conversation. That includes obviously black women. Um, and so hearing these women speak this way about what they're looking for and being very deliberate, I found somewhat refreshing, even though I disagreed with a lot of it. It was interesting to hear the Africans, the sister from South Africa, speak about, excuse me, kind of tapping into, and for those of you that hear me coughing, I'm sorry, I am still dealing with a cold right now, or the remnants, the last remnants of a cold, which is pretty much the dry cough. So hearing the sister from South Africa speak about essentially tapping into the dark femininity and enjoying it. Thank you for the super sticker, Oliver Gray. Um, you know, did I say like, share, subscribe, hit the super chat? Like, share, subscribe, hit the super chat on your way in. So it was interesting listening to these ladies speak. Um, so first, there was a part of me. We're not gonna forget that Kim Foster pretty much said that men are socialized to be sociopaths. Okay. But there was a part of me that listening to these women speak was like, this is impossible. This is it. What I actually enjoyed about the South African sister is that first, she was the first to pretty much jump it off. Well, she wasn't the first, but I think she actually was the first to jump it off and say, well, is this just me? She did take some type of accountability for these things. And her being, I think she was 29 years, she's 29 years old, somewhere around there, 29, 30, if I'm not mistaken. Her being that age and being a full-fledged doctor does put her in an income bracket that's going to be difficult to match. Number one. Number two, she seems to own this way, and it's actually refreshing hearing her speak. Remember, I actually didn't like some of the things she said, but it was refreshing to hear somebody be so in touch with what they're asking for and looking for, and it's almost like someone that might be your enemy, but you're actually, it's actually a welcome that they have some skill, right? So it was refreshing listening to her speak, even towards the end where she essentially said like she's better than pretty much most men in that like she just accepts like patriarchy's not going anywhere, capitalism's not going anywhere, and that's more like where she was going, the better than most men thing. But she pretty much said like capitalism's not going anywhere, patriarchy's not going anywhere yet, sad, but like I'm going to make my way through this. She's fully cognizant that she could potentially be a single mother. She could find herself because she kind of wants to have kids, and Kim did push her to kind of think about like, well, if you want to have children, then you have to figure out how this is supposed to work. And she, like, in somewhat of a facetious way. You know when somebody says something half joking, but you know they're serious? In somewhat of a facetious way, she essentially said, yeah, I'm gonna have a kid and like out of wedlock probably, and like my kid is just gonna have to forgive me later. Like she pretty much said that, right? Train tracks, train tracks, train tracks. And like it is refreshing to hear a black woman pretty much own that there's a possibility that they will have a child out of wedlock, and it's very deliberate. It's a very deliberate choice. What I also found interesting was the conversation of what relationship are you witness to that you would like to model, or that's like kind of the beacon on the hill type of relationship in your mind. And all of them pretty much said none, especially for a certain age group, right? All of them pretty much said none. Kim went far enough to say, you know, there are relationships that I see that are successful, but there's none that she would set as the gold standard. And I think that's when the rubber meets the road, right? The rubber meets the road because you don't even have a model for us to examine and then say, you know what, okay, yeah, that we can make that happen, right? Number one. Number two, pretty much, if not all of them, almost all of them wanted some type of new, refreshing thing. I can't even put words to it. I know it sounds like I'm just rambling. I can't put words to it because they couldn't put words to it. I don't want what I've seen. What I want, I don't even necessarily know how to put words to it. I don't know how to describe it, but I want something new that I haven't seen before. And that, hearing black women say that, it's as if we are turning something that's already complicated into something even more complicated, right? Just for the sake of newness. And like a lot of and I appreciate Kim for pretty much saying like a lot of what she's doing is defense mechanism trauma, right? Like erecting barriers and walls, that she too has been essentially a trash person in relationships. And this is why I'm saying like this is a part of conversation that you do not get. As much as I'm like disagreeing with some of the things they're saying, there's a certain level of honesty you tend not to get from black women, and a certain level of introspection I think may make some black men a little queasy. There's a certain level of introspection here and honesty, and we have to be honest. And I think something that this is where to answer Stefco, this is where the passport bros come in. You are a well-rounded black excuse me, you are a well-rounded black man, and you're gonna hear me once again coughing. You are a well-rounded black man. You are in touch with your emotions. You're emotionally intelligent. You are mature. You have your ish together, but you want a nuclear family with someone that doesn't think that black men are sociopaths, right? With someone that likes to be around you and that doesn't think that's with you in spite of all your shortcomings, right? And I think that's something that these women kind of spoke to. They spoke to certain women just like engaged, like men. Like, you like having sex with the opposite sex. You like when the opposite sex makes you feel all gushy inside. You like when the opposite sex shows up for you and helps you out and saves you or gives you some type of word of advice or perspective that you may not have considered that's beneficial. But you don't really like the opposite sex. And like what we saw here was like to a certain extent, women kind of over intellectualizing the fact that they don't necessarily care for the opposite sex. They're somewhat afraid of the opposite sex, and outside of the sex part of having sex with the opposite sex, yeah, you know, there was the sister, excuse me, there was the sister that spoke of being in love with the concept of love. Um, you know, I said of Ostefco with the first video I reviewed of her, excuse me, of her pretty privileged video. I said of her, she's your standard issue college educated black woman. And I think the conversation I saw here, excuse me, with Ostefco, I'm not with Ostefco, I'm sorry, with Kim from Fort Harriet and with the other 4 women, was your standard issue, you know, was it 3 or 4 women? Was your standard issue, it was 4, I'm sorry. With the 4 other women, was your standard issue like college educated black woman? Like it's complicated, right? And like, I do think love and relationship is complicated, but as Kim spoke of in her kind of mini monologue in the beginning, yes, women, black women right now, I would argue, have erected walls that's even hurting them themselves. Forget black men, fine. Black men are a non-issue in this conversation. You have erected walls that are hurting yourself. You have so thoroughly bought into black men ain't ish that you've turned certain things, and Kim somewhat admitted to this, turned certain things, excuse me, from a molehill into a, and now you're kind of practicing relationship PTSD on yourself. You're suffering from some type of trauma and relationship PTSD, and now black women have become so risk adverse that they're hurting themselves. You're already hurting black men. That's already, but you don't care. You don't care about hurting black men, so fine. You don't even care about hurting black children, quiet as kept. But you're actually hurting even yourself with this risk averse, excuse me, view of like relationship and like what you're not willing to deal with. And like, black women are walking into relationship with what I'm not willing to deal with it. These are my hard no's, and it's like, right? And it was interesting hearing the couple of them queer, even though they want to be in. I think a lot of this queer talk is virtue signaling, right? This is like the I'm like this modern metropolitan kind of you know, open, not racist, not sexist, not homophobic, not transphobic black woman. And like the way you show that is by like kind of virtue signaling that you're pansexual or you are some type of queer when you probably really aren't. You're just speaking that way because that's like the way you show that you're not any of these negative traits that we tend to associate with straight black men, but whatever. And so when the African sister was speaking about essentially accepting that patriarchy and capitalism isn't going anywhere, one of the sisters that's in a heterosexual relationship with a black man for some 3 years pretty much asked her, like, have you considered opening your sexual dating pool, not just on some swirl or divester thing, but opening her sexual dating pool to like this not heterosexual thing. And the African sister kind of shrugged her off like, yeah, no. Right? But this entire conversation, what was screaming to me was the nameless protagonist, and shout out to the nameless protagonist, hive model. His hive model was because they kept on using community as this kind of substitute for intimate relationships with heterosexual men. right? And like, excuse me, it just was screaming to me like this is what Nameless has been talking about, right? Like, yeah, there will be men in this hive, but for the most part, it's women, like, in air quotes, community with each other because, like, no one else is good enough. Heterosexual men aren't good enough. Once again, like y'all know, I like to say, non-black men for the most part are too racist. Non-black women are too racist and good enough. So for the most part, so like black women have erected this, what the Nameless protagonist I think accurately calls the hive, but what black women are calling increasingly community. And they're the way they're increasingly combating the way they've internalized this kind of neoliberal assessment of men and masculinity and this kind of rugged individualism is to lean on air quotes community, which really seems like the hive model that the Nameless protagonist speaks of, right? And it's I've so thoroughly complicated these things. I've made peace with the fact, like the African sister was saying, like I've leaned into maybe the dark triad part of femininity, and it's like because the African sister, and I gotta stress this part, she was speaking about, and I want to do her some justice here. She was speaking about leading into these things because, quote unquote, the good girl thing is not working for black women either. So like, why not break relationships? And she said break up marriages. Kim caught that and said, I was with you until that part. I want to be clear. So what we're saying is that there are black women that are deliberately destroying relationships. And you know what the African sister was speaking to is nothing new. All that's we've heard that with the kind of what's the term I want to use here? With the hoes be winning, like, you know, black women saying this, like the hoes be winning, excuse me, like, and you hear other women say that sometimes too, where the hoes be winning is their kind of like excuse for doing whatever they want to do and just blaming it on, well, being a good girl doesn't work anyway, right? And so that's what the African sister was speaking to. But once again, I mean, what I appreciate about her is she fully leaned into like, why not be toxic? I'm not gonna win though. I'm not gonna win in the way that I want to win. So why not just be toxic, right? And I would like to see what these women on this panel, what they define as a win. And Kim asked them the question, and it was so convoluted. I don't know if I truly followed it. And I'm gonna listen again for a third time to see if I can really get some real answers. But maybe my little heterosexual black male brain can't really grasp the answers, right? And y'all like, share, subscribe, hit the super chat. Yeah, this was an interesting conversation. It's interesting listening to black women speak this way, and it wasn't, to be honest, it wasn't a whole lot of black men ain't ish rhetoric. I mean, there was the subtext of black men ain't ish, and they're not showing up for us in these particular ways. But some of them did admit when they've been toxic. Kim admitted that a black man has shown up for her in a way that she wouldn't probably have shown up for him. You know, there was that. To be honest, right? So I did find this conversation very interesting, but the struggle love part of it, the risk adverse, right? Risk averse. You know, and I have to talk. Oh, I almost forgot about this. The part of this, one of the sisters spoke about, you know, why do black women have to struggle in this way? And I can't believe I'm gonna say this. I actually appreciate Kim checking her and saying, nah, this is like, no, people struggle. Relationships like are a struggle, right? And I actually appreciate that. And I think not enough. We don't do enough. And I remember Seren, that used to be on the Grapevine. She had a video once speaking about relationships on her channel, and she was speaking about what was the sister that was on that Real Housewives of Atlanta that was the Miss America at one point. Her face is in my head. Gorgeous sister. I forgot her name, but she was speaking about her, I think, filing for divorce or speaking about relationship, and somehow, she was saying pretty much like, this is just relationship stuff. Like, black people, but I would argue in this particular conversation, black women do this woe is me thing when it comes to certain things that happen to them or happen with them. And like, it woe is me, black women, like, why does this have to happen to me because I'm a black woman? It's like, no, this is like a human thing. This is like a relationship thing. This is like like the disagreements, the arguing, the shouting, maybe the sometimes snapping at each other, the miscommunication. That's what happens when and I appreciate Kim for saying this. A flawed individual tries to connect with another flawed individual. This is like a human thing. But like, what's the flaw? One of the major flaws in intersectionality is like, it puts black women on this moral pedestal thing, and like this oppression Olympics. It has them on trying to achieve the gold medal for oppression Olympics, that they don't really recognize sometimes when a thing is just a thing. It's not a black thing. It's not a black woman thing. It's not even a black thing. It's a thing, and it happens to people, and it's not great, and it's not glamorous, and it's not necessarily good, but it happens. And it's not happening to you because you're a black woman. It's happening because you're a human being, right? And I think I appreciate the fact that to a certain extent they low-key were kind of checking each other on this. And like I said in the beginning, I would argue most human beings don't have the emotional bandwidth to engage in that conversation in the way that they did. Even though, once again, I disagree with some of the framing and some of the language, and definitely Kim saying men have been socialized to be sociopaths. No. But, standard black women issue stuff, they got to bring you in for some. But, black men, y'all got a problem, right? You know that had to happen. You know it had to happen. But I appreciate that, at least in this conversation, it didn't happen a whole lot, right? And as a matter of fact, okay, this is going to be scary. I actually saw black women speaking. They didn't say the word accountable. They didn't. But being just a smidge, teeny tiny bit more, what's the word I want to use? Like I said, introspective. I think that's probably the best word, right? And realizing, excuse me, the shortcomings in themselves, and one sister answered the question, but Kim did ask, have any of you, and I'm paraphrasing, have any of you reflected on a relationship and said, you know what, that was actually me. I was actually at fault here, and here. And Kim admitted that she's done it, and one of the sisters kind of went into detail and said she did it. And I think the reason why I'm covering this is, first of all, the struggle love title for the video, but secondly, this was once again a bit refreshing, because oftentimes what you get from these conversations are men bad, me innocent, and especially from black women, it's black men bad, black men don't show up, me innocent, black men monsters, beginning end, right? Kenya Moore, yes, thank you, Ray Alexander. Kenya Moore. That was the name of the sister that I was thinking about. That and thank you, Toya. That was the name of the sister, the Miss America that was on the Real Housewives, and the when that Seren years ago. This is years and years and years ago. Seren spoke about this, and I appreciate when we have the conversation about going through a human experience and it not necessarily being, now it is colored, and I mean this as a pun. It seriously, but as a pun also, it is colored by race, right? When you go through this kind of human experience that all other humans go through, but because you're black, it in America, it has a certain race element to it, obviously. Um, but there's something to be said about speaking about these things like other people don't go through it, right? And I think the black community sometimes over romanticizes other groups of people or other individuals like they don't have issues too, right? And I'm glad that Kim kind of checked something. It and it's this is a very classist conversation to a certain extent, because and I want to stress this. What ends up happening often is sometimes you have these well-to-do or black women that's now making YouTube money, or black women that are really they're straight financially. They're doing pretty well off financially. And then they start to give advice or start to speak in a way that actually is very detrimental to your everyday black woman that can't live her life. Right? So you end up pretty much saying F all men, or you could do it without men, and essentially the black woman version of rugged individuality. And then you run into the wall, excuse me, other black women who try to imitate you run into the wall of like they can't do that, right? They can't actually live what you're speaking, right? So I think it's important to stress that, and I liked the fact that Kim actually somewhat implied that, right? Excuse me. And I think, you know, the class element is going to be something that needs to be stressed more. Who's getting married, like y'all hear me say all the time? Who's staying married? And one of the number one reasons for divorce being money, right? Being financial issues and women filing for divorce, right? And the African sister was speaking about the fact that her parents are going through a divorce right now, and she thought that they had it all together, and now they're going through a divorce, right? The other 29-year-old, the sister with the shorter haircut, she said in the beginning that she has never been in a serious relationship at 29 years old. Alexa, cue up Mr. Z saying, but haven't I said this before? Right? There are a lot of women, black women, because we speak about the incels, and I'm not necessarily calling this sister a femcel. I don't know if she's had sex or whatever, and she spoke like she has, but I'm not, once again, I'm not calling her a femcel, but I am saying that we have to be honest that it's easy to have all of these concepts, these ideas, what you won't settle for, be hard up on these things when you've never really interacted with the opposite sex on that level. And especially not for a prolonged period of time. Right? And so now you have all these concepts and these ideas informed by second wave plus feminism, or womanism, or whatever you want to call it, or black feminism, or black womanism, whatever you want to call it. But you have these ideas of what you won't settle for and what type of intersectional man you're looking for. And all of that sounds cute. But you damn near 30, if not over 30 for some women. I'm not speaking about this specific sister. And you've never been in a serious relationship with a man. And like maybe that's one of the other reasons why you're questioning your sexuality, which this young lady I'm speaking about is questioning her sexuality. That's why she said she's kind of, I'm paraphrasing, I don't remember exactly, but she's kind of playing with some of this kind of queer, the kind of queer concepts. And I'm like, but of course you are. Because like, what this kind of brand of feminism or womanism, whatever you want to call it, that many women, particularly in the black community, have adopted, it does cause y'all to have somewhat disdain for men. So of course you're going to play with different types of sexuality, because, and this is like where Khadijah comes in my mind and kind of says, like, I don't really have to deal with the straight black men because like I'm queer. Like, yeah, so you could salt the earth with all your weird concepts because you don't have to be in community with black men, or at least be intimate with black men on that level, to see how that actually works with black men, right? All these weird, what y'all think is highfalutin concepts of relationships and intimacy and how you want men to show up for you and blah blah blah, right, etc etc. And when you're actually in intimate relationships with black men and they actually exhibit it, you realize the shortcomings, or like, yeah, I actually don't want that, right? And it speaks to something FD Signifier said in a previous excuse me in a previous video about how women react to men that are emotionally intelligent, and like how you then weaponize the same patriarchy that you rail against those men, and essentially, and excuse my language, call those men bitches, right? And I'm excuse me, I'm reviewing this because I thought it was interesting to have black women speak this way, right? And I don't know how often we are witness to women, black women in specific, speak this way. And you know, Kim spoke about being atomized, and I I'm trying to put these words together. I want to see how it I and I think it the responsibilities falls on my shoulders to kind of actually create this content, but I don't think we speak enough about how neoliberalism, consumerism, materialism, kind of the atomization of all of us, how does it show up for black women, and how much of the rhetoric that we hear online is black women regurgitating these or not regurgitating, spewing this insanity, comes from how they're interacting with all the words that I just used, the neoliberalism, the consumerism, the materialism, the atomization of individuals in our society, the disintegration of community, not just in the black community, but the kind of like do for self, solo dolo, right? Get it out the mud. You know, excuse me. How do black women interact with that, and then how does that affect their intimate relationships with black men? And yeah, I think excuse me, we're not usually privy to this level of conversation, and we're not. I'll compliment the women by saying this: I don't know, once again, how many people have the range to engage in this conversation the way these women did, especially without the every 5 seconds, these niggas ain't shit, right? Right. Big Kev, yes, I did. Big Kev asks, did you see the Tory Lanez verdict? And thank you for the super chat. Big Kev, yeah, I saw it. I saw it. If y'all have noticed, I've like not really spoken about the case. I was neither here nor there. I I still don't think we know enough, right? Um, yeah, I did not. I loosely followed the case, but that's not even the reason why I didn't speak about it. I didn't speak about it because I don't. Young drunk people fighting about who did what with who sexually. Yeah, that's a recipe. And rich in a limo with a gun, like that. Yeah, I knew like that was. Yeah, that was like a recipe for disaster, right? Even though they're celebrities, black celebrities, young, drunk, rich, limo, gun, just not. Yeah, just not. Nah, you know. Um, and once again, Seb, thank you for the super chat, and once again, thank you, Oliver the Grave, for the super sticker. Um, Oliver the Great said, refreshing, don't know about that. We don't give accolades for striving to get a C plus. You know why I say what I said, Oliver the Gray? It's because sometimes you gotta celebrate the teeny tiny. It wouldn't be victories because this is definitely not a victory. Definitely not for black men. Sometimes you have to, and it sucks. I'm gonna say, take what you could get. And like, if this is like, if this is the best that we're going to get from this type of, especially these type of like educated black women, this like, and like I said when I mentioned the Ostefco thing, like what you saw in that video is that is like your standard issue, not just regular college educated black women, because to be frank with you, your everyday college educated black woman doesn't, they can't come, they, quite frankly, and I'm not trying to be insulting, they don't have that range. They don't speak like that. And I would I would wager they don't have that intellectual heft nor the emotion. They don't just, they have the degree, but it doesn't mean that they've truly examined themselves. It's easy to critique others, right? And I don't even know how good of a job we do at that, right? But to truly be somewhat introspective and even to spew out your toxicity in a way where you're like, yeah, I'm gonna stand on it. This is who I am. This is what I want. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. And so what? Which is somewhat what a South African sister was with it, right? Which is like, yeah, I want to have a kid, but I don't know if the whole marriage man thing is gonna work. So yeah, I guess my kid is gonna have to forgive me on the back end. Which, you know, if she's a doctor for real, I mean, yeah, that's really a possibility. If she probably earns enough to sustain her and a child for real by herself. And there is something to be said about, yeah, I might have emotionally messed you up a little bit. Yeah, I was deliberate about finding a man I found attractive that had the physique and the height and the whatever, and doing the do and being with him long enough to get you to toddler age, or at least to get you to the point where you were crawling. And then, you know, yeah, I did that. And but you know, we went to nice vacations and you had the best of the best, and I put you in the best school. So yeah. And when I pass away, all of what I have is what you have. So, you know, all in all, it wasn't the worst now, was it? It is, when I say refreshing, the fact that this black woman just pretty much told you like she's considering deliberately like doing this. How often do you have a black woman that pretty much said like, yeah, not not as a response to not as a response to any immediate like bad thing that's happened to her or bad heartbreak, just her looking at the environment and saying like, yeah, I kind of want to do my own thing and I want to kind of lean into my toxic femininity. So yeah, why not? But I still want to have a kid, so this is probably going to be the outcome for me, right? And you know, and then there was the sister that had the kid, and like pretty much said like, I'm glad I have my kid, and I'm self-sufficient, and like, yeah, she was low key. She was probably the most F those Negroes, right? And I mean, the African sister was on that too. Well, all them sisters were on that. Um, and we already know Kim be on that. Yeah, this conversation was it was insightful, and it was, and like I said, I still maintain somewhat refreshing. It's, I don't know how much new we got from it, right? It was some new, but a lot of this comes off as over intellectualizing some of some things that are very simple. And I say that because even with Kim having to say, and I'm paraphrasing this, like, nah, that's just a human thing, that's not a black woman thing, I think speaks to sometimes just doing too much, right? Or sometimes trying to be different just to be different, right? You ever hear like, it's like your uncle that comes out of jail and like starts using the 4 and 5 syllable words out of context in a conversation for no goddamn reason, right? The principality of the thing, what? Right? And so like excuse me. I That's what I heard, especially towards the end, where a few of them came to the conclusion like they want something new and different that they don't see, right? They can't tell you exactly what model of relationship they want to model, right? Um because every relationship that they're witness to, even the ones they think are somewhat successful, there's things that they wouldn't be down with. And I think that is where we get into some very sticky situations. Like, if you can if we're dating and I say, all right, so what okay, what couple do you see where the man is kind of the example of what you think that would be something that you appreciate if I could imitate that as best as possible, and you don't even have the answer? And that's for the men that's even willing to do that, right? And like I said, the um the nameless protagonist hive model kept on coming to my mind, excuse me. But also what kept on coming to my mind is, this is impossible. This is impossible. Like, more and more, all I'm hearing is women in particular, especially younger women. These women are like, later 20s, early 30s, maybe. I think Kim's in her early 30s. But like, and when I say younger, I really mean like, under the age of 40. But listening to them speak, all I hear is like, but what are men supposed to do with this? Like, all of these women are some type, yeah, they're queer, but they're not necessarily against being in a relationship with black men, right? Intimate relationship with black men. And I'm like, so what are men supposed to do with this, what you're saying? Like, how, if you don't even know, then how the hell are we supposed to know? Wait, but then you have a problem with the whole male leadership patriarchy thing. What? You have a problem with patriarchy and men having this concept that they should lead, right? That they're innate leaders. Okay, cool. Fine, granted. But then you don't even know what you want to do. What? I So once again, and I'm about to end now. I appreciate the candor to a certain extent. I appreciate um Kim finding women that were somewhat introspective, um, and can speak about their shortcomings. And like the African sister said, like straight up, she was like, "Is it me? It's me. It's me." Right? And that it's really, y'all know, black us, all the brothers that's listening to me speak. Y'all know how hard it is for a black woman to just straight out say, "Yeah, I'm at fault here. This was me." Right? Not, "I did because you did." No, this was me. Right? And so I appreciate that. I appreciate the candor and pretty much saying like, You're looking for a sperm donor, right? Because you think this is all effed anyway. So, you know, might as well go it alone. And if you can find some, and the African sister said, can you, essentially like, okay, I'm not gonna get what I want. So can I at least get someone that can throw down in the bedroom and eat some, you know, and yeah, I think way more black women are there than we would like to admit. I think she just has the ovaries to say it, right? I think way more black women are there where it's like, F it, I'm not gonna get what I want anyway, so let me just find some dude I find supremely physically attractive that can throw down in the bedroom, hopefully get me pregnant, and by the time this toddler's walking, I would have deaded this situationship, this thing, whatever this was. I think she just has the once again the ovaries to actually say it, right? Also, shout out to the sister that pretty much said like, 29 years old, I've never been in no serious relationship, right? And so she's considering opening up her sexuality, you know. Yeah, that's whew, all right. Big Kev said it's all about abandoning, and thank you for the super chat, Big Kev. Big Kev said it's all about abandoning the feminine burden of performance. That's what all the liberation talk is about. And I would agree with you. I agree with you. I think, and y'all know Mr. Z and how I speak about these things. There's nothing wrong with that. I just want you to deal with whatever comes with that without saying it's because black men are a problem or men are a problem, right? Um, on another video, Kim spoke about our obsession with punitive, like the obsession with like seeing people hurt or pain when you think they went wrong. Um, and I'm paraphrasing, and I agree with her on that. To be frank with you, I don't get off necessarily watching ha ha ha. Yeah, suffer because you didn't go this way and I told you to go this way. But there's a catch to that. And the catch is there are people that make very deliberate decisions to go left. They consider the consequences and they go left anyway. So what are we supposed to do with those people, Kim? It wasn't an accident. Now, some people think they know what they're doing, and what I mean by this is what I mean. This is what I mean. Some people think they know what they're doing, as in they want to spite you. We're not talking about children now. We're talking about adults. I want to spite you. I want to hurt you. I want you to feel pain. But inadvertently, the kids get caught up in me trying to get at you, and I destroy our children emotionally, mentally, psychologically, right? There are women that have done that throughout time. And we, because of especially this kind of gynocratic order in the black community, we don't often talk about how the women, the parental alienation, how the women destroy themselves, destroy that man, destroy the kids because of a feeling. Right? So it may come off as the society, the black community in particular, be like, haha, she deserved that. Haha, get her. But once again, what are we supposed to do with wayward women, Kim? Not wayward men, wayward women who destroyed themselves, their children, and the men off of a feeling. Sometimes unwarranted, a feeling that's like a fleeting, it's not even that serious. And I bring that up to say this idea that you're going to lean on the community or the hive, as the nameless protagonist calls it, because you lack or you don't want to engage with
the men of that community, right? So you're going to lean on the hive model of community. There's a problem there, right? And we have to be honest that there are women who have made themselves so insufferable that men stay away from them. And what they're now attempting to do, because the shaming tactics aren't working, is now speak about community in a way. This is where we need to gather around our sisters and love our sisters more. I am woman, hear me roar. That's what that is. Right? And so you hear Kim from Fort Harriet speaking about community. I don't know how much you hear Khadijah using that word, but essentially speaking about community, right? You hear Julesy speak about community, and like essentially bypassing the intimate relationship part of being in relationship with heterosexual men, and like putting that burden on, air quotes, the community, other women. It's borderline political lesbianism. And by the way, Big Kev, I'm still speaking to your comment, right? It's borderline political lesbianism because, like you said, they're trying to abandon the feminine burden of performance. And like the African sister said, and you know, why perform? I'm not getting the accoutrement and the accolades that I think I deserve. So why perform this femininity that men are asking for when I'm not gonna get what I think I deserve? And like as a black young woman doctor, like I don't think she realizes how much she outpaces just about everybody else in society. Right? Before we even control for race, before we start talking about black community. Right? So like for the most part, what you can afford, most people can afford it. And you're a doctor at 29, 30 years old. Like other professionals aren't going to be getting to the money you're probably making for another maybe decade, if not longer. Right? So yeah, I mean, this was, like I said, this conversation I found intriguing. Um, I appreciate the candor, like I said. I appreciate a certain level of introspection. Once again, y'all can see clearly disagree with some of the conclusions that were made here. I think we are stepping into some uncharted territory with this. You know, black women reserve the right to always think they're better than you because they, once again, they think they're morally superior to you, and that's pretty much where it starts and ends. It goes around in a circle, but it pretty much starts and ends with thinking they're morally superior to you and buying into the hype of like women's moral superiorities, Earth Mother Goddess, creator of the universe, creator of all humanity, type thing, right? And it manifests differently for different type of black women, from the hotep black women all the way to the college educated black women that we see represented in this video. Um, yeah, and so think intersectionality informing you that somehow you have this borderline innate, if not straight up innate, moral compass and sense of justice that others don't have, um excuse me, gets you here, right? And thinking that you have a level of emotional intelligence that others don't, I think gets you here sometimes. And listening to these black women speak, the future, I really think I for 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 the majority of people, I'm not even controlling for race with this. I think it's done. I think it's done. I think it's done. I think I listen to these women speak, and it's just like, this is why there's a passport, bros. These men are just trying. They're literally just trying to go to work, come home. Like Kevin Samuel said, they're just hot dog eating, baseball watching, apple pie loving black men. They're just this critiquing every little thing and like over intellectual and just for the average man, forget just black. They're no, they're just over it. Hell no, hell no. This is just your polysyllabic, verbose way of just saying you ain't on my level, right? And like most men, they're over it. They're over this kind of pompous critique of men and just, yeah, they're just over it. They're just over it. All right. And although these women could have really got into that if they wanted to be honest with you, they didn't even engage in that all the way, right? And I appreciate that, but still, it was in the air. And yeah, to be honest, I mean, men are over. I listening to brothers speak, both in my real life, here online, reading different comments all over YouTube, not even just in this black manosphere space, just or even in this relationship space. Just when you get into a conversation about men and women, men are over it, right? Men are over it, right? And you know, I appreciate, like I said, the candor. I appreciate what that excuse me. They were. It was just you just got to see. I think she already got the views anyway. So some of y'all watching it, y'all not really gonna give her any more. Y'all not gonna give her money that she wasn't gonna get anyway. So if you if you could stomach it, shout out to the brother Trell Bentley. Trell said once y'all start using pronouns, right? But and that's another thing, is that going to become the pronoun thing isn't super recent. How many people are going to really engage in that? I don't know. It reminds me, and I even did it for a little while until I had a Latin homie pull me to the side and say, "Yeah, that's some weird liberal crap. We're not actually doing that." Though, y'all remember when like Latinx was a thing, and like you had certain Latinos and Latinas coming out of these colleges and universities trying to push this, and for the most part, the Latino community was like, yeah, that's my weirdo cousin over there pulling that, but for the most part, we don't speak like that, and we're just not, right? So I wonder if this kind of pronoun thing is gonna be that, right? Where like it's gonna be, we're gonna hear about it for another couple years, and then it's gonna kind of fade into the darkness. Um, but I think these particular type of like social commentators and critiquers and like talking heads, once again, I think it's rare to have them speak like this, right? Um, yeah. And Kim was honest, like what they're looking for is uber rare. What they're asking men for is uber rare. Then you got to ask yourself, why would a man even engage in that, right? GC says the pronoun thing is deeper though, Z. Tons of jobs are asking what your preferred pronouns are on job applications. Could just be the tech industry, but I've seen it a lot. You know what? Yes. Um, I haven't applied for a job in a little while, so there's that. Um, and is it the jobs virtue signaling themselves? Of course, of course. Um, what you hear often with this type of language is that they're attempting to use language that's more inclusive, right? So you ask, how would you like to be referred to? And obviously, there's the hims, the hers, the theys. I'm still weirded out by an individual that wants to be referred to as they, them, to be honest. Um, and as a lefty, I gotta be honest. You know, um, I'm the old guy now, right? I'm the old guy in the room, and so I'm not against expanding the language. I understand as a lefty, we're always trying to expand the language to be more inclusive. That's part of this thing that I'm, yeah, yeah. But right, I'll pause right there with that. But you know, the pronoun language, and especially when you get to they them's, whew, yeah, bro. And like I said, I think with this, the I think younger black women in particular, when you get under the age of 30, and you see the pronoun language heavy with a certain demographic of women, like I keep on saying, these kind of college educated um women in that space. It's not even all college educated black women that's engaging in that. It's a certain like circle of them, right? And you hear the pronouns and you hear them speaking, and you're like, but is that a thing really though? Right? And like, yes, I understand it's on applications now, but I mean, I know LGBTQ people, black people, and I don't know of any that ever refer to themselves as they them, or said like I'm not a she or a her, right? Like I don't. I'm not saying that that's not on the horizon and that might not be a thing. Well, actually, I kind of am. I kind of am saying like I don't know how much of that's going to be a thing in the next few years, right? Right. And like somewhere in Britain, in America, are like radical feminists like tapping on their fingers like Mr. Burns saying good, good, right? Like, because it's happening. Like the segment that I played last year, I think that I created that video like over a year ago, at least now. But yeah, yeah, the radical they won, right? They won. And so, but I'll pause right there. I'm feel like I'm rambling now. Like I said, I get where everybody's coming from. I get it. You know, but I appreciate the candor, and uh, on a scale from 1 to 10 of like black male bashing, I don't know if this even broke 5 relative to some of the other stuff that we've heard. Like the bar for the bar, because they do it so often, the bar for like outrageous talk when it comes to insulting black men is so damn high. I don't even know if this is not like this doesn't even register. So it made it a bit more digestible. Emphasis on a bit more, right? And yeah, so like I said, being privy to black women being somewhat introspective, and admitting that sometimes they're being very cold and calculated. It's not woe is me. I'm being acted upon. Life is happening to me. No, I made this very calculated decision and it bit me in the rear end. Or for the African sister, I'm considering making this very deliberate, calculated decision, and consequences come as they may, and I'll ask for forgiveness from my unborn child in the future. And like her just straight up saying that was just like, wow, right? Like, and but remember, she wouldn't have said that if Kim didn't press her a little bit, right? And like I said, she said it halfway joking, that halfway facetious, but I'm really serious type thing. Like I've really considered it. I'm joking, but I'm not joking. Yeah. So let's see. Let's see. I look forward to. Kim said there she's looking to do another video. I will start to review more of these types of conversations because I find women talk fascinating, right? Because you juxtapose that to how we speak as black men, especially in barbershops or amongst friends, and it's just fascinating watching these women, this particular class of black women, um, speak, right? And like how they speak about men and how they like the words they use and the concepts they come up with. And like essentially they were saying like I'm looking for something new that I don't see. And I'm like, well, so what the hell are like what are men supposed to do with that? Like I said. But yeah, so let's end up with the rambling. Um like, share, right? Thank y'all for being in with me. Um and dealing with my coughing. I hope I didn't cough you guys ears off too much. And love, peace, and chicken grease. I will pause right there. And yeah, wow. Okay. Yeah, that hive model is in full effect. And shout out to the brother, the nameless protagonist, for kind of giving us some the base concept, or at least giving us a lens to look at some of these things through, right? And to see a hive when you know a hive when you see a hive, right? Know the hive when you see the hive, or know when the and this is because Kim did a separate video speaking about community. It wasn't in this same video, but they did mention community a little bit here. Yeah, know a hive when you see a hive, even if they're gonna name it something else like community, right? So I'll truly pause right there. Yeah, thanks for coming in. Mr. Z out. Let me go do my relationship thing. All right, y'all. Mr. Z out.